Well, the promoter of the Tim Tszyu v Michael Zerafa grudge match has announced next week's fight will go ahead. But now the Zerafa camp is threatening to pull out their fighter. Main Event's Ben Damon joins us now. Ben, great to see you. Talk us through exactly what's happening.
Yeah, good morning, Alyssa. So the situation is that No Limit Boxing Promotions announced yesterday they would go ahead with this fight. Of course, we're 8 days away now. On July the 7th, it's meant to take place, a Wednesday night, live on Main Event and at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre, a 50% capacity for the venue if it does go ahead. But today, the Zerafa camp is saying that they're not comfortable with travelling to Newcastle at the moment. They've sought some advice from the Victorian government, Zerafa, of course, being based in Melbourne, and given the changeable nature of what is happening in New South Wales at the moment, the majority of their team say they are uncomfortable with travelling to Newcastle for this fight. So there's a lot of conversations to take place through the course of today, but the last that I've heard from their camp and the manager, Sam Labruna, is that they are uncomfortable. They'll be seeking further advice and they'll be trying to find a way that they can come and take this fight. But as it stands right at this minute, they're not comfortable with making that trip. So No Limit have got some convincing to do. They're going to have to talk to the Zerafa camp and try and get them there. Of course, Tim Tszyu has based himself in Newcastle over the last week, so he's there and ready to go. He'll actually be speaking to the media at midday today. But Zerafa still in Melbourne and at this very stage, not too comfortable with travelling to Newcastle ahead of this fight.
So, Ben, fingers crossed it does go ahead. But in that case, how disappointing would it be? You know, you talk about the capacity being reduced. As a fighter, what does that do to them?
Yeah, 50% capacity from a venue like this would take a lot of the atmosphere out of it. Last time around, when Tim Tszyu fought against Dennis Hogan at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre, it was like nothing else we've seen at a closed arena in domestic Australian boxing for a very, very long time. An incredible atmosphere. They were chanting Tszyu throughout the duration of that main event. The venue has actually been renamed the Newcastle Entertainment Centre for this fight. So, yeah, the 50% capacity is a real issue. It is a real disappointment for a lot of people who won't be able to travel to this fight or won't be able to get tickets now and attend the fight. Of course, it did sell out within 24 hours of going on sale. So the interest in Tim Tszyu in Newcastle is quite incredible. The atmosphere may be trimmed somewhat, but if it does go ahead, and we certainly hope that it does, given what a grudge match this has become in Australian boxing, no doubt there will be a great deal of feeling in that venue and on TV screens around the country and around the world.
Ben, you talk about how everyone was cheering Newcastle and how they adopted that name because he has become a real star up there. How much of an advantage will that play out on the night if it does go ahead?
Yeah, you'd have to think that would be a significant advantage going into a home arena against someone from interstate who isn't well liked by a certain section of the Australian boxing public. Michael Zerafa, a fantastic person when you know him outside the ring, but he's really made himself as the B-side, as the bad guy in a lot of these boxing promotions, and people seem to have resonated with that. He does get a lot of people offside. He's done that with Tim Tszyu over the course of the last week, and no doubt Tszyu will be the fan favourite in the venue, and that has to be a huge advantage to him. Dennis Hogan, a world-class opponent who was beaten by Tim Tszyu at this arena last time around, no doubt it did play a part for him, just seeing how one-sided the audience was in the venue, that cheering as well, and the atmosphere that it caused. So Michael Zerafa will have to come up against that, but he has fought right around the world in some major stadium fights and in some really big fights against major international opponents. So we'll have to wait and see if it does impact him on the night.
You don't often see Tim get too angry, but he wasn't overly happy when Zerafa brought up Ricky Hatton's victory over his dad, Costa. It has certainly ignited the build-up to this fight. What did you make of the whole exchange?
Yeah, it was fascinating, really. I was sitting in between the pair of them while we were filming that face-off piece, which will actually run on Fox Sports 505 for the first time tonight at 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. We've seen the snippet that's come out where Michael Zerafa did refer to himself as Mickey Hatton in reference to that 2005 fight where Kostya Tszyu was beaten by Ricky Hatton and ultimately it ended his boxing career. Tim Tszyu was not at all happy that that was brought up. He thought that that was below the belt, and he could just feel the atmosphere in that room when we were filming that segment just sucked out of the room. And it was very clear that Tim Tszyu was extremely upset and angry that it would be brought up. Zerafa tried to back away from it a little bit, but Tim said, no, it's already been said. And I don't think that Michael Zerafa had any idea that it would cause so much angst in his opponent. So Tim Tszyu's been outspoken about that ever since, and you'll be able to see the entire exchange tonight on Fox Sports 505.
Yeah, we can't wait to watch it, that's for sure. But if the unexpected does happen, Michael Zerafa gets the win over Tim Tszyu, what would that mean for him?
Oh, it'd be enormous for Michael Zerafa. He's had some big opportunities, of course, internationally. He had one taken away from him after he caused another major upset in Australian boxing, beating Jeff Horn in Bendigo. That was meant to give the winner a big fight in Japan against Ryota Murata. Ultimately, Jeff Horn demanded the rematch, and Zerafa couldn't take that opportunity. But if he were to get a win here, there's probably another rematch for him against Tim Tszyu. But if not, there's some major international opportunities. He's still only relatively young. He's got himself a good profile in international boxing after that fight that he had with Kell Brook, and of course the victory over Jeff Horn. So it would be life-changing for Michael Zerafa if he could cause an upset. But first and foremost, we're going to have to get him to Newcastle next week to take the fight.
So personally, Ben, do you think that the fight's going to go ahead? And if it does, who's your tip?
Yeah, interesting to speculate on whether it will go ahead. Having spoken to Michael Zerafa's manager this morning, you're not given a great deal of hope that they will travel, but hopefully there can be some conversations today and the team can be made more comfortable and they do travel to Newcastle and this fight does happen, because it is such an entertaining fight and it's been such a great build-up and a grudge match that's been building for years. So, yeah, I think it probably does go ahead, but we just don't know, and obviously we don't know what happens with the COVID situation in Newcastle. Heaven forbid, and throughout New South Wales at the moment. If it does go ahead, you can understand why Tim Tszyu is such a heavy favourite for this fight, and the markets have him a really pronounced favourite to beat Michael Zerafa. He's on such a trajectory at the moment that you'd fancy him to beat any super welterweight in the world. Zerafa an outsider for a reason, but he has caused an upset before, so it's a fascinating fight. Just can't wait for next Wednesday night if we get to Newcastle for this event.
Fingers crossed it does go ahead. But Ben, before I let you go, in some disappointing news, Justis Huni, he's been forced to pull out of the Olympics because of injury. What does that mean for Australia's medal hopes?
Yeah, that's a terrible blow. Justis Huni being pulled out of these Olympic Games. When we spoke last week, I mentioned that there were still some medical options that were being looked at for Justis Huni to get over to the Olympic Games, but I guess that window is closing by the day. It's just heartbreaking for Justis because he's been aiming towards these Olympic Games since he was 7 years of age. He had that fantastic win over Paul Gallen, and the injuries were caused, in fact, a couple of weeks before the fight before that, when he fought against Christian Tszyu in sparring. So he's been very unlucky, and it is extremely disappointing. In terms of Australia's medal hopes, well, he was the star. He was seeded third in the super heavyweight division, but there's a really good crop of Australian boxers who have headed to training camps and will be in Tokyo. So we just hope that one of them can jag a medal and do something really special in Australian Olympic boxing.
Yep, disappointing news for Justis Huni, but we do keep our fingers crossed. Ben Damon, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Alyssa.